This morning I'm going to show you how to use this tool right here, Make CabWriter Component. In this model I had to make a lot of custom components. Many of them just weren't made by CabWriter. A good example is this mid-rail right here. So I'm going to show you A, how to make this mid-rail component, and B, how to use this tool, Make CabWriter Component, to make it an integral part of this cabinet. And to do that, let me just go to my base layout, view the axis, get rid of my walls, now in this model, if you look over here, this component, there's two of them in the model, 1, 2, and they're called the mid-door rail, and they belong to C17L. And they happen to be, I can find my tape measure tool, they happen to be 3 1/4 inches high. That's not a coincidence. I made them the same height as the bottom rails. And so what I want to do is draw this custom part, but I'm not going to draw it from scratch. I'm going to use a technique that is very useful and helpful in CabWriter, and you'll find that there's a lot of times when you can do this. I'm actually going to copy this part right here, and I'll pick it up at its midpoint and hit the control key because I want a copy of it. Put it at the origin, and then I'm going to copy this part. I'll have to unlock it first, pick it up at the midpoint. Whoops, that's not what I want. I want to copy it. And this one I'm going to place at the bottom, at the origin. Now when I do that, I have two parts overlapping. This part gives me my upper dado, and this part would give me my lower dado if I didn't have the upper part blocking it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make both of these parts unique. Because if I don't make them unique and I edit them, I'll be editing my originals. So I'm going to make them unique. And now the upper one, I'm going to modify its height. I'm going to bring it up. Whoops, got to go into edit component mode first. And I'll modify its height. I'll bring it up. And now that exposed the dado on the bottom. The dimension, overall dimension, is still 3 1/4, but now I've got my tenons where I want them. I got dados on the top and bottom. The only problem is I still have two parts, but that's easily remedied. On both the Pro and Make, you have the tool called Shell, Outer Shell. So I'm going to use that tool. Select this part first. Select this part second. And there you go. Now I've got one part called Outer Shell. Notice down here that it's a solid group called Outer Shell. Now to use this tool, I'm going to explode that. So I'll just right click, explode. Maybe it didn't explode it. Yeah, it did. Okay. And I'll select all the primitives of that part now. And now I can use make CabWriter component. And that brings up this dialog box. Notice it also converted this from primitives to a solid component. Notice over here it's now a solid component. And it has the name at the moment, definition name of group number 1. We're going to change that. First of all, we know it belongs to cabinet C17L, so we'll just type that in here. And notice you don't have to type capital letters. It'll make them capital if you don't type capital letters. The type of part it is it belongs to a door group. And that means I'm going to need the number of the door, which in this case is number 1. It's door 1. And here's the very important part. This is what everybody forgets, but you shouldn't. This is the drop-down box that changes depending on what component type you used. For every component type, there's a different set of subtype attributes. For the door, you get attributes called styles, mid-styles, rails, mid-rails, panel, and solid. We're going to choose mid-rails because that's what this is. And choosing this will cause CabWriter to put all of the Cutlass Bridge attributes that belong to this type of part in the part. If you forget to do that, you will not have Cutlass Bridge attributes. So make sure you always assign this. Now, the description of this part is going to be mid-door rail. And since I've only got one, I'll copy that and make that the instance name as well. I want it protected. And so with all of this information that I just used here, here's the resulting information. This is what's going to get assigned to the part. The part's going to be called C17LD1 mid-door rail. Its instance name will be mid-door rail. Its subassembly will be C17LD1, and it'll be CabWriter protected. So you can't change this yourself. You can only manipulate this by putting information in this kind of mid set of data here. This upper set of data is simply what's in this part prior to using make CabWriter component. And it's there to help you understand what the previous definition name was, and if there was an instance name, what was it. Now before I hit OK here, let me go back and delete these parts that exist here now. Otherwise, I'm going to get a complaint that those parts exist already. And it's not enough to delete them because they're still in the component library. I have to use, I have an extension that I use called purge. And I'm going to tell it to purge everything. And notice it deleted 3 components. One of them was this component here. So now I can say OK. But before I can, I have to go back and fill in the make CabWriter component dialog box because I just selected and deleted some components, and that caused the make CabWriter component dialog box empty. So let me go back and do that. So now I can say OK. And now I have my part. I'm going to put it back where it belongs. And let me see if I can pick it up. Huh. All right, I'm going to have to use this to do it. There we go. Now we got it. So now I got it in place. And I can move it over. Make a copy and move it over. And now I've got both of them in place. And I've got what I wanted. Let me just check it. Notice it's a base door on the base doors layer. It's a mid-door rail, C17LD1 mid-door rail. And there we go. So that's it. That's it's how easy it is to use that tool. There's a couple of things you want to remember. And one is that if you're going to use parts like I did to make another part, do two things. Make sure when you copy the parts, you make them unique. And second, if you're going to replace another part like I did, delete those parts if you're going to give them the same name as the old parts. Delete those parts and delete them from the component library before you try to use those part names with the Make CabWriter component tool. Let me just say that again. If you use existing parts to make a third part, make sure that when you copy them, you make them unique. Secondly, if you're going to use the name of a previous part in the new part, make sure the previous part is deleted and that you actually delete it from the component library. Otherwise, you will get a complaint that it already exists and the Make CabWriter component tool won't do the job you want it to do. All right? So until the next video, have a good day.